This is a keyboard, but I'm not here to talk about that today. This is a Logitech MX Master 4, and it's been 6 months since I got it, so here's my 6-month update. So I actually made a video about this mouse last October, and I mentioned all the new features it has compared to my previous mouse, which was a Corsair gaming mouse. And of those features, there's some that I don't really use and they're not as important to me. And there's other features that I really love. So let's talk about the former first, starting with the action wheel. And personally, I think the action wheel is an amazing feature, and it's super useful to have 8+ shortcuts accessible from one button press. But I honestly don't use it as often as I should. Most of what I do at my computer is coding, so I have my hands on the keyboard most of the time, just using keyboard shortcuts for stuff. So it's not really a useful feature, but I do think it would be very helpful for photo and video editing applications like Photoshop. And I personally actually do use it for DaVinci Resolve when I'm editing videos, but I can't think of any other times it's been helpful for me, really. So I was super excited about the shortcuts when I got this mouse. And the mouse does support even more shortcuts through the gestures feature. And like I said before, you just press a button on the side and you move the mouse forward, backwards, left, or right to perform these shortcuts. And I don't ever use the gestures, but I do sometimes use a regular gesture button press, which I currently have bound to the application switching. So it's basically the same thing as pressing Alt-Tab. So it's pretty useful for me, but I honestly can't remember what the gestures are bound to. And that's part of the problem, because unlike the action wheel where you see what you're about to click, the gestures is just all memory based. And I think if I spend the time getting used to them and learning what the gestures are, they could become quite useful. So I won't say it's a useless feature, but it is slightly gimmicky to me. Oh, I also really emphasized just how excited I was for the scroll wheels. And the scroll wheel on my previous mouse actually stopped working, and I had to bind the scroll functions to the DPI buttons in order for it to work. So when I got the MX Master 4, I was glad that it had a high quality aluminum scroll wheel, and it actually also has an electromagnetic scrolling mechanism. And the scroll functionality actually adapts to speed. So you have very precise haptic scrolling at slow speeds and very fast scrolling at fast speeds. And the fast scrolling does not have that haptic feedback. It's like it's disengaged, and I think this is because of that electromagnetic feature that I said. As much as I love the scroll wheel, I do particularly have some issues with the fast scrolling functionality. And overall, I do love the functionality, having it have that smart switch so you can have very precise scrolling and also very fast scrolling if you need to skip to the end of web pages and documents, which is what I particularly really use it for. But the problem is it does keep that scrolling inertia for quite some time. So if I don't realize that's happening and I press Control during this period, it begins to zoom in or out of my web pages and applications. And the fix for me is simply to stop the scroll wheel with my finger, but the problem is I have to make the conscious decision to do this. So I'd kind of like if there was a way to configure the inertia that it does have. I don't know if that's physically or technically possible. It's not really a huge issue. It's just first world problems. And by the way, there's also a smart switch button at the top of it here, which you can use to switch between the fast and slow scroll modes. And I never use it, but you can actually bind it to a different functionality if you want to, so you get one extra button on this. Now, let's get a little bit more positive and talk about the features that I really love for some contrast. Continuing with the scroll wheel, I actually do really love the line-by-line mode, as I said. It's very precise, and I love the haptic feedback. It's really nice. You can feel like every single detail as you scroll. And this is the mode I use most of the time, even though I do have Smart Shift enabled. I did make some adjustments so it stays in that kind of zone for longer. But when I do need that faster scrolling, Smart Shift makes it super easy to switch. So I get the best of both worlds. So the MX Master 4 has what Logitech calls the 8K DPI dark field laser sensor. And I know it does look like a regular mouse sensor, but it's a special sensor using special technology, and it allows the mouse to track on any surface, even glossy and transparent surfaces. So you can use it literally like anywhere, and you can even use the mouse on glass. And if you've used regular mice before, you know that you can't use it on super glossy or transparent surfaces. It would not work on glass at all. And I actually had a similar issue. About a year ago, I had to buy a mouse pad because I was working remotely and I had a glass table. So I had to get a mouse pad because my mouse was not able to track the glass. And that's the kind of thing where I think this is really going to be useful if you do work often at like cafes, libraries, and basically anywhere you don't know what your work surface is going to look like and you don't have a mouse pad. You don't need to worry about whether or not you'll be able to use your mouse, or if you'll have to like, downgrade to a trackpad. You bring this with you and you can just use it anywhere. So particularly for me, it's useful if I'm traveling and working remotely. And it's even useful for me if I'm working at home even, because sometimes my desk gets super cluttered and I got to do something on my computer real quick. So I grab my mouse and I can just track this on my pants and it works flawlessly. And as I said, the action wheel is actually really, really useful. And I love it even if I don't use it that frequently. I do use it for changing the speed of clips and other retime controls in DaVinci Resolve, as I said, and it saves quite a lot of time instead of having to right click or go through menus and stuff like that. So now I'm going to address something that probably a lot of the people who have had the MX Master 3 and are considering getting this MX Master 4 are thinking. The MX Master 3, if you've had it or heard about it on the internet, it had some issues with the rubber degrading after a few years of use. So I've had some people ask me about how well the MX Master 4 is holding up. So let's discuss the build quality. Well, one advantage that the MX Master 4 has over the MX 3 is that the rubber doesn't actually span the entire back half of the mouse. It's not on the full back portion of it. You just have it on the sides here, and we also have it on the sides over here. So even if the rubber does degrade over time, it's not going to be as bad as the MX Master 3, because that would be basically the entire portion you're putting your palm on. But here it's just really this action wheel button, and then the side here as well. This isn't really that important. I honestly think they could have probably made this plastic still. This could have just been all plastic. I do like how the action wheel does feel with the rubber on it, so I'm glad they did put that there. So even if it does degrade, it's not going to have as big of an effect. And I have noticed that the thumb button is getting a lot glossier and smoother, and this is probably just from like the friction of my fingers and also the oils in my fingers. But I'm hoping that the rubber that they used here is a different, more resistant rubber, or that it's at least easier to replace. Should I take it apart and see? Apart from that, the mouse does still feel solid. It's got some weight to it, and the rubber feels really, really nice under my fingers. The aluminum scroll wheels also do feel nice, even though they're not rubber. And that is one thing that I was kind of worried about when I started using this mouse, because my previous mouse had a rubber scroll wheel and I kind of like the way that felt under my fingers, but this feels great. Some of the concerns I originally had with this aren't really issues, starting with the weight. And it honestly feels great in my hands at that weight, and I haven't ever had my hands really get tired of it after using it for over 8 hours a day. But to be fair, I'm mostly on my keyboard because I'm primarily typing code, but I still think it'll be fine. The silent left click is something else that was more of a preference to me, but I don't think it's that big of a deal, and it still works as it should, and there's enough feedback within the clicks itself, so I think I'm happy with that. And the last concern I had about this was how well this mouse would work for gaming. And I know that people are mainly getting this for work because it's a productivity mouse, but I did test it briefly for gaming in my original review, but now that it's been a few months, I can confidently say it won't be good enough for competitive games and FPSs. The polling rate is too low, and I did notice quite often that my crosshair wouldn't move around as smoothly as I want it to. That and the weight disqualify it for gaming for me. So I just swapped to my old wired mouse when I need to. And to end things off, probably the most important aspect of a wireless peripheral is the battery life. And it's amazing. I can't really say how long exactly it lasts because I can't remember when I charged it last, and that's how long ago it was. I just checked while I was making this video and it was at 35%, and I have it on probably for, I'd say 18 hours a day. I turn it on when I start work in the morning and I turn it off right before I go to bed, so it lasts pretty darn long. But yeah, if you have any questions about the mouse, make sure to drop them in the comments, and if you like tech content, reviews, and unboxings, then this is the channel for you. And that's all. Subscribe for more. Oh, and follow my TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter if you want to. I post short form content on them, and I am also trying to post more non-video content on them. So just give it a follow. And by the way, there's also a smart switch button on the top, which you can press and it switches between the fast and scroll modes. What